Hi, this is Kieran Roach, CTO of CoEvolve. We've recently been working on some integrations between Amazon Echo devices and the VMware NSX SD-WAN by VeloCloud solution. Today I'm going to walk through some examples of this and describe some potential use cases that could help our clients. We'll look at two main areas: querying data from an existing SD-WAN network and creating a new virtual SD-WAN edge in an AWS VPC. First, let's take a look at how these components fit together. We're going to look at four areas here. We start with an Alexa skill. This is a new skill that we can write to extend the built-in capabilities of the Echo device. We'll write out some of the example phrases that we could say, and these get mapped to specific parameters that will be passed into our application. Amazon uses their natural language processing technology here, so if we ask, "What's my top application?" or "What is the top application?" it'll invoke the same function consistently. Once the skill has identified something being asked, it calls an Aws Lambda Function. This is a serverless compute resource that sits idle until it's invoked by something, the Alexa skill in this case. The function is called and it passes parameters into it that identify the intent or the question that was being asked. We write the Lambda function in Python, and we're actually reusing almost the same code base that we use for some of our own customer reporting. The Python script makes calls back into the SD-WAN API, which lets us get data on a specific device or on the entire network or other queries like that. And this API then collects the necessary data from the orchestrator sitting in the SD-WAN network itself. All the data makes its way back to the Lambda function, and then we send text back to the Alexa skill, which turns that back into a voice response for the user. Let's take a look at what's behind the scenes in this script. We start in the AWS Lambda function that controls the request going back out to the SD-WAN API. And you can see here we've created a Lambda function called mySD-WAN-checker. And it shows that it's connected in two directions. One is connected into the Alexa skills kit, which we'll show in a moment. And then it's also storing the regular logs associated with the Lambda function itself. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see that it's based on Python code that is essentially pasted in here. As I mentioned earlier, we've used a lot of our existing code for this. And this is a fairly standard block of code for us where we've got the functions to log into the SD-WAN API, collect data, format the responses to give us application names and other meaningful information like that. We've got some country lookups to convert country codes back into country names and so on. And then we have a number of functions that are specific to the Alexa skill itself. So a good example of that is we've got a function here which is get welcome response. So this is the function that will be triggered when the function is invoked, and I'll show you the other end of this in a moment to highlight how we actually get into this in the first place. But you can see that we are essentially typing out the responses that we are going to read out over the Alexa device to the user. So if this action is triggered, that is the text that will be converted into speech for the user of the application. There's similar ones then for goodbye, and then further down we've got the ones that are specific to this particular skill that we're working on here. I'm going to switch back to the Alexa skill at this point to show how we invoke different parts of the Lambda function that we've created. So we're sitting in the developer portal for Alexa at the moment, and you can see that we're building a custom skill that we've done some work on here already. So we have a number of components here. We'll start with the invocation of this. So each Alexa skill has an invocation name, which is what it will listen for, and direct it to the appropriate point. So we're using my network here as an example. Once this is called, it will direct the flow into that specific Lambda function that's associated with this skill. In a production environment, we'd probably have something a bit more unique, but for the purposes of testing here, we can use this approach. Below that, we've got a number of intents. So these are the questions that a user may ask the Alexa skill when they want to get some data from it. So I'll go into one of these to give an example. This is a skill that an intent that we've called "What's my usage?" And what we've defined here are 3 different ways that the user could enter into this intent. And we just give some examples. We say, "What's my usage?" or "What is my usage?" or just "usage." In more complex skills, we can have intent slots. So we can have an interaction between the skill and the user where it asks follow-up questions and the user provides additional data then that gets fed back in as an additional parameter. In this case, it's very straightforward. We've just got the 3 sample utterances, and that's essentially it. We don't have any other parameters or details behind it. And we've got a similar structure then for each of the other intents that we've documented here. So activated sites, we've got a number of different ways we could ask it. How many sites are down or how many outages could be a question we'd want to ask. The top application, and then we've got a goodbye intent. So what we've done here is create a unique name for each one of these intents. If the user says one of these phrases or a similar phrase to these, that will pass that intent as a parameter back into the skill that we've created inside the Lambda function. So let's follow one of these and see how it might work. If we say, "What's my usage?" for example, if we look back into our Lambda function, we can see we've got a handler here for various request types. So we've got one that's the US data center usage, we've got one for the US data center app usage, and we've got all of the scripts that need to be run behind the scenes there, including calling the appropriate functions within the SD-WAN API as part of that. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see how we get into those in the first place. We can see an action that gets invoked here called onIntent. So when a user specifies an intent for the skill, we look for what is the name of the intent, and you can see here that these names match the intents that are listed in the Alexa skill. So we will receive that intent name whenever that intent is invoked as part of the skill. And then what we do at that point is just return the response from the function that's associated with that. So we've got a very simple one-to-one mapping here. We could do this in a much more complicated way if we wanted to, but for the purposes of this demo, that works. So we can see if we ask "What's my usage?" it'll go back to the function called USDC usage, and if I search for that, you can see we've got it up here. We take one specific edge, we pass in the parameters to get the link metrics, looking for the total bytes, we set some start and end times, and then we receive the response from the API as a JSON object, and we take the sum of all of the WAN circuits at this location, adding up the total bytes parameter. We convert that into a human readable number, so we'll round it up to megabytes or gigabytes or terabytes depending on the scale, and then we build a string, which is the speech output, where we'll say your data center SD-WAN usage in the last 24 hours was whatever that value is. So let's switch back again to the Alexa skill and test one of these. There's a test mode we can enter into here, and this will let us simulate what would actually happen if we were speaking the same words into an actual Amazon Echo device. I'm going to type these rather than say them, just so we can see exactly how it's being handled. So we'll start by saying "ask my network," and you can see it comes back with the response that we've written for that intent. So we've invoked the skill. Now we're waiting to be asked what we want to do next. So if we say "What's my usage?" it is now going back, pulling that data using the SD-WAN API and sending it back as that human readable string back into the skill. We can ask, what's my top application? Same thing will happen. It will go back, it'll look at the usage on that site, and it will convert that back into that human readable response. And you can see that we send the details back to the user. You can ask any of the other questions. So how many sites do I have? And again, it will go back and look at the live data in the network. You can see we've got 399 devices in this network. We can ask how many outages, and it will again follow that same approach. It'll look at the status of each of the devices, and it will show any devices that are marked as down. So we've got 16 sites that are down across the network, and then we list the countries that those devices sit within. That's all for this part of the demo. In the next part, we'll demonstrate how we can use the same Alexa interface to create a new SD-WAN edge in an Amazon Web Services VPC. Thank you.